Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Cloud Native Meetup Community A to Z panel. We've got some awesome panelists for you all today, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things about meetups, from what they are and why you should consider going to them, to how you could get involved with them, to how you might want to run one at some point, if you would like to do that kind of thing. So I will let our panelists introduce themselves. We're waiting on a few more people to wander in. This room is kind of informal, so if you can't see our panelists over here, you might want to move. But if you would like to start.
Me? Oh,
sure.
Hi, I'm Lisa Marine Amphy. I think my Twitter handle's up here, Software Dev Angel. I started running meetups, oh my gosh, years ago, lifetimes ago, it feels like, probably about 6 years ago. I started running the OpenStack user group, and because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, it was the first OpenStack user group, and it grew huge, and so meetup.com/OpenStack. So we grew it to over 6,000 members, and then I started running meetups almost exclusively on containers or just whatever adjacent technologies. So I think in the last 2 years I've run 19 meetups on Kubernetes. So I eventually put the meetup group into the CNCF. It's now almost 7,000 members, and it's the world's largest CNCF user group, I believe. I haven't gone through all of them. I think it is. Pretty sure one of the Kube ones is going to pass it soon. But because we're cloud native, open infra, we can cover a lot of really interesting topics. Sometimes we get into networking, and sometimes it's IoT. But it's mostly about containers, and it's mostly about Kubernetes, because that's just what people want to talk about. So I got into it because I love talking about tech, and I love bringing interesting conversations about tech to communities, and I love building communities and architecting communities. And giving people a place to go to have those conversations. So that's what I do, and I do it in the San Francisco Bay Area.
It's great. All right, my name is Ihor Dvoretsky. I'm a developer advocate at Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and I am a person who helps CNCF with driving our entire Meetup program worldwide. I had an experience of being a meetup organizer in my city in Ukraine, in Lviv. At the same time, I'm not involved into any kind of meetup organizing activities anymore. I have so much stuff to do besides that. But again, I'm helping CNCF with driving the meetup program, and I'm excited to see so many people right here on the stage. They're organizing the CNCF meetups together with other people in the audience and in the convention center here.
I'm Matt. I'm the Director of Cloud Native Engineering at NetApp and former founder and CEO of StackPoint Cloud. I got involved with the meetups because I thought it was a really good marketing idea for the company. It's just honest. So what we did is, so I started the Seattle, San Francisco, we started New York, Chicago, and Berlin as meetups years ago, prior to the CNCF coming into being. And then we took those meetups and we grew all those communities locally, because at the time, Kubernetes needed to be evangelized at a local level versus at a global level. So that's kind of what we did for a full year to try to just increase membership. And now we're at a couple thousand people per meetup location. And I think we're over 10,000 total across the globe. So it's been a really wild ride.
I'm Lee. I'd watched some of that wild ride that Matt had gone through. Just an impressive taking of the knowledge to the people, so to speak. I think a lot of that was like physical travel for you as well.
Yeah. Every month, going to San Francisco every single month.
Some dedication. I'd be a lot heavier than I am now if I did that. But
what are you saying here?
Yeah. So I'm coming to you from Austin, Texas. If you can, boy, that's like my worst Southern drawl. We'll try it later. My full-time focus is at SolarWinds. They're based in Austin. I end up wearing a number of different hats in the community. A couple of them are organizing Docker Austin and Cloud Native Austin. End up participating in the program that Ihor helps steward here, the Cloud Native Ambassadors program, as well as one of Matt's folks are in that. So I end up wearing a hat as a Docker captain. Generally have an inner geek that needs to be fed. But find that, kind of just like Ihor had mentioned, that to the extent that the meetups themselves become pretty popular, and some of the content and that knowledge is desired, keeping up with them and trying to ensure that the community is fed is more than you might otherwise expect when you initially sort of volunteer your time.
Mm-hmm. Topics have to evolve over time. Yeah.
So those are our lovely panelists. They deserve a round of applause. So the way this panel is going to work is I have several questions prepared already, but I would also like to get some audience participation. If you have any questions that you would like to ask our panelists at any point, just raise your hand and I'll make sure that you get called on. And first, I would kind of like to see who we have in the audience today. Who do we have who has never been to a meetup? Several, cool. Welcome. We hope you learned some cool stuff about meetups. Who do we have that currently helps speak at meetups or maybe occasionally hosts them or organizes them? Nice. A lot of people. Cool. So let's see. Where do we want to start? Are there any questions for our panelists right off the bat just from their introductions? No?
I'm going to interrupt if I can, just make a realization that for the 3 or more that raised their hands saying that they hadn't been to a meetup before, kind of an interesting thing, and I'd be curious about hearing from some of the other panelists about a common question that we ask at our meetups is, hey, is this your first time at Docker Austin? And I'd say on average, like 40% will raise their hand, which is kind of an indicator both of the continued freshness or the continued, or just how long it can take for technologies to propagate. So Kaslin, sorry to interrupt the flow, but just I thought that was interesting. Clearly folks who haven't been probably interested in going to a meetup, learning more about what they're about, but those that have been organizing, hopefully we can share some tips. Curious, do you guys ask that same question? Who's new to the meetup? If so,
I actually don't ask that question. I ask who's running Kubernetes to figure out where workloads at and who's running in the public cloud versus private cloud. So I more do questions around technology and use, figuring out future technology as well, like what should Copics be in the future. Things like Istio is how we started measuring Istio was through that route. So that's kind of the type of questions that we would ask. But we also do ask questions on the RSVP side of things. So that way we can take that data and just aggregate it. Because we do get a lot of new users of Kubernetes, people who've never used it before, still.
Yeah, I'm not a meetup organizer, as I mentioned before, but if I would be, I would ask this question. So it's definitely useful to understand who are the people in the audience, who is the target audience for your meetup group, and specifically it can help you to develop the long-term program and strategy for your meetup group. What kind of speakers are you going to invite next time? What kind of talk are you going to? What kind of talks are you going to present and show to this audience next time? So yeah, that is.
Yeah, I don't ask that specific question because in the Bay Area, most people have been to a meetup of some kind. So, but more like what Matt said, I ask what they're interested in and where they are in the evolution of whatever technology we're talking about. Kubernetes is a good one. How many people are running it? How many people are running it in production? It's always a different show of hands. Are you running stateful applications, stateless? Whatever we're talking about. But I love pushing new technology out. I ran the first ever Istio meetup 2.5 years ago here in Seattle at DockerCon. That was super, super fun. I ran the first ever Zool meetup. I love to run the first evers. So I don't ask if you've ever been to an Istio meetup because, it was the first. But I think it's interesting to know who is in your audience. And we always get a mix. We get a mix of people that want to contribute to the community. We get a mix of people that, are working on, an OpenStack. They're working on the design of one of the projects, or people who are operators. Operators and architects get often forgot about in this conversation until way later. And that's been an interesting thing with Kube, right? To really, we understood this from OpenStack, to really push more towards content for operators and architects and less for developers, and make sure we don't forget about them because we have to make this technology successful as part of our jobs as meetup organizers. So those are the questions I'd like to ask.
Something else to say, Matt? No?
No.
Okay.
I was going to say one other question I've asked is how much. There's one you can ask the question of how many people run Kubernetes, and there's going to be a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But a better question I think is how much revenue do you have on Kubernetes? and what's the percentage of revenue for your corporate company running on Kubernetes. So like if you ask Disney that question, it's going to be a fraction of percentage.
Yeah.
Or how much data? 1
Yeah.
terabyte.
How much data do you have?
A petabyte. Like what is running in those containers?
Are you running stateful, stateless?
Yeah.
I like those perspectives, and I love that you can see already how passionate our meetup organizers are about meetups and their communities. So kind of to keep going on that, I'd like to ask for anyone who hasn't been to a meetup before, what are your favorite parts about going to a meetup? You always are organizing these meetups, so I'm sure that it tends to be very stressful and very busy, but you clearly love it. So what do you love so much about it, and why do you think people should get involved in the meetup community?
Yeah, good, great question. Actually, just before that, I'm going to reflect on what Ihor said, which is understanding your audience. And for us, understanding that about 40% of the time, folks raise their hands saying, not that it was their first time going to a meetup, but their first time coming to that particular meetup. The way in which we internalized that and then kind of changed some of the agenda was to commonly try to have 2 talks if possible, maybe a shorter first one that is a bit of a sort of 101 repeat into the particular technology that meetup is on. And so just wanted to, Ihor, that's a great reflection. And then to the other question about, hey, what is it? What do I get out of meetups when I go as either an attendee or maybe one that I'm organizing? And there's a number of things. I won't prattle on long, but maybe just call out the most maybe the most prominent one, and it's in part what feeds me as I go to conferences like this, and that's engaging with like-minded
Community.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Catching up, having those talks.
I like the fact that it's local community versus, so the KubeCon's great, it's awesome, but I don't know most people at KubeCon anymore. I mean, it used to be where we knew everybody. So the local community, I think, is more powerful. You can actually reach more people. You can have more one-on-one conversations with people local to you. You can set up post dates afterwards to have coffee to catch up on interesting topics. That's what I like about the community when it's local versus a global thing.
And you hit it when you said passionate. For me, I'm passionate about technology. I grew up in Palo Alto, California. I be in the ecosystem of open source and of bringing amazing technology to communities and collaborating and making it free. And that's, if you're not passionate about it, I mean, burnout is a real thing. I think a lot of you are meetup organizers here. It's real. You have to take it seriously. But it's that passion for the technology first for me, content, and then community as well. And bringing that technology to the community, and then bringing the community back to the technology and the whole community. Diversity is also something I take very seriously in our meetups, and bringing the I guess we're using the term underrepresented at this conference in order to help underrepresented communities develop the technology and be part of the community and stay. It's not just joining, but staying in the community. So those are the reasons I do.
I have nothing to it.
Let me have that. I'm going to add to that, and that is, even being one of the well-represented majorities, I recollect probably the first couple of times going to a meetup. Wasn't quite sure what to expect, kind of what the format was, and whether or not I was going to be forced to interact with people and make conversation, and just being sort of the classic introverted engineer. A bit nerve-wracking even, I think it's hard to over-revolve on what Lisa's saying about being warm and welcoming and including. And so, to the extent that I had experienced that, it's real.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I started going to meetups. I was very scared that I was going to have to interact with people, and I didn't know anything about the thing I was going to learn about, and I wasn't sure if that was going to be a problem, kind of like going to the gym and people. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. We had a question from the audience. Yeah. And I'm going to repeat questions, just so you know, because we are recording this.
We can run the mic out if you want.
That's true, we could, yeah.
Easier than you having to paraphrase such a long question.
Thanks.
It's true.
Hi, I'm from Costa Rica. Just an introduction. So for the context, I'm interested creating a meetup in Costa Rica, because so far right now, if you want to go to a meetup in Latam, you got to go to Colombia, or you got to fly to Argentina or so. So my question is, I bet for you guys it's really easy to get sponsorship or get funding because you're like advocates and a founder of a company. But like for a regular guy like me, how do I get sponsorship or how do I get funds to get a meetup? Because I will need a venue, I will need some goodies or beers or whatever to get people engaged. So maybe you can answer or somebody else who organizes a meetup, because again, you guys are like high level. So,
Do you want to answer the CNCF funding side?
Okay.
Do you guys fund this?
Yes, we can. So,
Good to know.
as Lee mentioned, there is a CNCF program for ambassadors. Ambassadors are people who are like recognized by the community. They are driving the local meetups, the local events. They are also can be involved in the different parts of the community engagement. And if you are a CNCF ambassador, as Matt, Lee, and many other guys are, you're able to apply for reimbursement from CNCF for some of your costs. So if you struggled with sponsorship and you are a CNCF ambassador, we can solve like partially or fully that question for you. At the same time, it's a common practice for most of the CNCF meetups to have the local sponsors. So we don't have really so many meetup groups that are requesting this support, because most of them are like self-organized and self-sponsored by the local sponsors and so on. The typical way, what I heard, so I'm also not from the United States where there are so many IT companies that are active in the community world. I'm from Ukraine. We have so many IT companies, but they not all of them really understand the value of sponsoring the local meetups. So the typical case that I see in my country with the meetup organizer or meetup organizing gig, that people who are organizing these meetups are employed by the company that is sponsoring these meetups. And this is like the #1 sponsor for them. If this group is successful enough and it's visible on the local stage, and other companies will also join them and support them. So that's an answer.
It's tricky though. I mean, funding is, you have to get really creative and really good at passing around the hat and showing, part of your job as a meetup organizer is really marketing the value. For me, a lot of it is marketing the value of open source. That's where I start. So when I was at HP for, years, and I was running a lot of the OpenStack meetups, I leveraged the HP cafeteria to do it. But to get the funding was always a challenge because, especially as that company was kind of getting less open source focused and more, trying to make money, trying to justify paying for these every week was getting more increasingly difficult. And then if you just open it up to the community and say, oh, you can speak at the meetup if you buy the pizza, then you risk having a vendor pitch or something like that, and you don't want that at your meetup either. You want to keep it community focused and you want to keep it about technology. So you just have to get really creative about marketing. I'm lucky I'm in the Bay Area, so getting speakers isn't as much of a problem. You're in Costa Rica. If you're in a destination geo, I think people will fly to come and speak at your meetup. And then probably, if you get a good speaker, you might get someone else who wants to fund it. But what I try to show people is that there's value of hosting these things, because there's value of people walking through your door and walking past your logo, and then you're doing a community event and you're talking about the hottest technology in that community, whatever that happens to be. And once you market that value to whoever that employer is, a little bit, springing for beer and pizza, hopefully they already have the space and they don't pay for that, then it gets a little easy. But you just have to get creative about showing that value and really passing the hat around.
Yeah. Hey, my name is Mario. I run a DevOps meetup in Ann Arbor, Michigan, the tech hub of Michigan, and I actually did the first two once a month. I did the first two meetings myself entirely. I paid for everything, so $115 for pizza, I remember, cardboard pizza. And then I did the presentations myself, but it was something I was interested in. And I just told a few friends, I put the meetup out there. I had 25 people at the first meetup. I got a little lucky, but I just went, I got it out there, I got people talking about it. And what you find is people aren't coming because they want pizza per se. They want something to do at 6 o'clock where they can talk with people that are doing the same thing that they have to deal with for 8+ hours a day. So it's about that connection outside of just the normal work hours, et cetera. So, and then obviously sponsors and other people, pizza, $100 for a lot of companies is nothing. So you'll find they'll be coming to you eventually, so.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Is basically just go do it. Just start the meetup, start small. you don't have to have a location. You can go to a coffee shop and just have a conversation. And then, like he said, as your meetup grows, sponsors will come to you. Then through Meetup, you'd also be able to broadcast out to the membership to solicit sponsors. But you also don't need to, you don't have to supply beer. You don't have to supply drinks like that. You can go with just a small amount of pizza. Presenters can be difficult, but you'll get more people showing up. You'll get more sponsors coming towards you because, as she said, everybody wants to have their logo seen by that membership.
And you maybe try to tap into what it is that's interesting to that venue. So to the extent that maybe the CNCF potentially has you covered in and around some incidentals for food. And for a lot of venues or for a lot of companies that might allow you to use their space, talent attraction is probably number one. For number one reason why they would give up that space and have their insurance cover potential mishaps that might happen. But yeah, see if you can't play to to Lisa's point, like their interests.
And remember, there's some free options too. I mean, like Matt said, you can go to a bar and make everybody pay for their own things that they want. But there's also options like WeWorks. WeWorks bought Meetup.com, so it's kind of a pain. You have to present that you are the meetup organizer and your whole case to them, but then they'll give you space for free. They don't all let you serve alcohol there, which is a problem for my meetup group apparently. But you can get around that. But there are free options like that you can look into.
Yeah, in some respects, if there isn't a thriving meetup community, don't set the precedent to expect food and drinks. Hey, the content should, those that are there, they'll show. We did for the meetups that we're representing. It's kind of standard fare. It's become sort of expected. You might even hear some whining and complaining if they don't have their particular, and then you give them a swift kick and remind them why they're, what the value of it is, what they're getting for free, and so.
To kind of sum that up, so community is really important, and meetups are a fluid thing that's inspired by the community. So. You can make use of whatever you have as long as you've got a community there to talk to. And I never really introduced myself, by the way. I'm Kaslin Fields, and I'm a solutions architect at Oracle Cloud. And I periodically host and speak at meetups, but I don't actually organize one. But I'm interacting with a lot of different meetup groups, so it's something I'm really passionate about. And another answer to that question, just to throw that in there, there's a meetup in Bellevue called Cloud Talk, where he hosts it at a local government office. He helped them set up their TVs, and they let him use the space. So you can always call in favors. All right, are there any other?
Our last Kubernetes meetup at Oracle. Thank you very much.
Oh.
It was awesome. It was at Roto Shores in the Bay Area. Larry's
Lovely.
boat is still parked in that pond out there, the thing that won the America's Cup.
Oh.
So thank you for hosting. It was the first one we've done at Oracle in the Bay Area. It's kind of
Nice.
cool. Yeah.
I'm glad we could help. It's great to make these connections with other companies and meetup groups and communities. So what else do you all, as the audience, want to know about? Do you want to know about what it's like to go to a meetup? Do you have any other questions about organizing a meetup? Are there any questions on the tips of your tongues? Yes?
Yeah, so I host a meetup in Germany in a not so central location. So getting interesting speakers is an issue. There is a good community within Germany, so they travel. But I recently heard the CNCF has a speaker desk, and I'd like to know more about doing remote meetups, virtual meetups, and so on. What can you what is that service about?
Yeah, we have the Speakers Bureau. It's like the global catalog of all the people who have applied and can volunteer for speaking at the different events worldwide, at the different meetups or events with the higher size. You can check the Speakers Bureau. You can find every single individual, like in every area of expertise or every region. So just check it. Figure out who can be a good candidate for you to speak at your event. You can reach out to him directly via the CNCF website, and you can be in touch. That's it. Another tip that I can suggest to you is if you are running the meetup group in the area where you don't have so many potential speakers, the good opportunity for you will be running meetups before or after some big event that happens in that area. Like, so if you have any big events in that area, like it's a great opportunity for you to run the local meetup with some like real rock stars. For example, I remember our KubeCon that happened in Copenhagen half a year ago. So Copenhagen is not like the biggest IT hub in the world. They definitely don't have so many amazing speakers as, for example, Bay Area. But KubeCon happened in Copenhagen, so the local group in Copenhagen, they organized a meetup right before the day first of KubeCon, and there have been some really good speakers from as far as I remember, like few biggest public cloud companies were there, and that was really great experience for the local group, because not everybody can attend a big event, not everybody is able to visit the big event like KubeCon and so on. But everybody can join a meetup. Everybody is able to chat with the speakers who definitely like will not attend, for example, Copenhagen every time, like every week for speaking at a local event. So yeah, that's a good tip, and it works also in the different locations around the world.
Just a comment, we actually have to do our logistics around these major events, because that's like a vacuum, and people will be looking at the YouTube videos and things like that. So just to rephrase the question again, so the speaker desk is only like a catalog of people who are experts on topics, and we have to essentially contact the speakers ourselves, or is that a service like where we can say, look, we like to host something like this. These are the topics which were requested, and you'd help us in the logistics of that.
At the moment, the service, the Speakers Bureau is exactly the catalog of people who can help you with that. So you can feel free to reach out to them directly and negotiate a discussion about speaking a gig.
So just to add, oh, sorry.
We only have 5 minutes left, just to warn you.
I will not add to that question then.
Okay. So unless there are any other urgent questions from the audience, I have a fun question that I would like to ask our panelists.
I just want to say super quickly something to add on to that. Do not underestimate the amount. It doesn't seem like it here because there's 8,000 people at this company. There are so many people that don't come to, I mean, at this conference, sorry, long 2 days already. There are so many people that don't go. I ask this question every time I run a meetup, and we have between 100 and 200 people that come to our meetups every month. And most of the audience does not raise their hand. They really value you bringing the content to them. So don't underestimate that. People don't have travel funds anymore like they used to. They don't go out, like they used to. So it's very, very valuable to bring the content to them.
Meetups have value. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Huge.
All right. Any other urgent questions? Or shall I ask my fun question? All right. We're going to ask a fun question. So I'm going to combine two into one. Regale us with some of your most amusing meetup stories. Your greatest successes or your worst failures. Matt, I know you have a story.
Oh, which one should I tell? I'm going to tell one that involves the CNCF. This is a good one. So when the CNCF was starting their ambassador program, there was another member company in the CNCF that attempted to steal all of the meetups that myself and Ariel were running, and we had to take it to the CNCF to be resolved. And that company is not a company at this point anymore. We've also had people walk away with all the pizza. That was fun.
Jeez.
I've had speakers not show up, and then you have to do lightning rounds. Wow. Like, that's fun too.
Got to get creative with these communities.
You do have to get creative.
So there's sort of a don't mess with Matt message in there, I think, was the, some of the issues that we faced, and in larger tech communities, there are oftentimes just a whole bunch of overlapping meetups that are actually sometimes even share almost the same name, and it can be a little bit frustrating to get stepped on or squashed up against. And the reality is, or much of the reality is that, yeah, if you persist and you're passionate about it, and again, to Lisa's point, if you put in the effort and you bring the content, focus on that rather than the content, rather than trying to convince them that they shouldn't name the same, that you've got a trademark over that thing because you don't. Yeah, that has happened a few times as companies understand that very done right, an excellent way of getting at developers, getting at some of maybe those early decision makers who are maybe defining some of the infrastructure. Grassroots is a way. It's a treacherous path, as Lisa will tell you about, ensuring that you're not getting vendor pitches. Honestly, sometimes we welcome the vendor pitches. We just say it up front. Let people know if you want to know about Portworx, or come. It's the first one is but a lot of people do. They're curious. They want to know. They want to hear it. And so actually, it can be a really good thing. Just communicate that that's what this one is. And so it's your choice.
Yeah. The best trick to avoid vendor pitches is just to look at their job title. And if they have anything.
Not 100%, right? I carry a marketing title sometime, and I spoke very technically at meetups before, and I've written 2 books on OpenStack. So you have to dig a little bit deeper than that. We can't just throw everybody out because they have a title you don't like.
No, usually we throw out the marketing people.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying. Then you'd miss me.
I think the most value is to get engineers in and have an engineer doing a presentation versus like marketing or sales or biz dev. We've seen a lot of those come through.
Biz dev you can throw.
Yeah, biz dev you don't want
sales.
them at all at this show.
Though it also depends on your meetup, because there can be all kinds of meetups. It might be a marketing meetup, so you might want those marketing.
There's product manager meetups too.
Developer advocating.
Yeah, PM meetups. Yeah.
But I think what I thought you were going to say actually is when you have a meetup that's on the same night as somebody else, just combine stuff. I mean, this is so hard to do, and the more you can combine your communities, the better, and get other people, get your lists together and, cancel your night and say, I'll put yours on my calendar, we'll do ours in a month on your calendar. I mean, these technologies are related to each other and they're adjacent, and especially something like DevOps, it's a broad category. So as much as you can, work with other meetup organizers and combine these things. And then also just you can do meetups around these big conferences, but I also find it very fun to do meetups around big events. Like we threw a party for Prometheus when it graduated, right? We threw a party for Kube when it graduated. I don't even think the CNCF did that, So we try to do these things. I've thrown 8 OpenStack birthday parties, but we put a lot of content around those. We'll do hands-on labs. We'll do lightning talks. We'll do a lot of really great content, but we'll make it super fun. It's a party, and we'll bring a lot of energy there. So that's usually very successful. And one more thing, because someone mentioned something about introverts. If you're truly introverted, because believe it or not, I am, it's so much better to organize a meetup than to just go and attend it, because I've given myself purpose and a reason to be there. And if I just go to a meetup and I'm sitting there, I'm just like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing here? But I'm here speaking to you. I'm so much more comfortable than this than if I was sitting there, I would never ask a question. And I probably wouldn't go and talk to any of you. But when you're organizing it, you have a reason, and people come and talk to you. So for introverts, trust me, run the thing. It's so much more comfortable than just attending it.
And I'm gonna have to stop it there. We are at time, so if you have any other questions, or Matt, if you want to give your last little thing as people wander out, we can.
Last little thing. If you are in any of the major cities in the U.S. right now, there is a meetup that you can attend today. The good ones are going to be the ones that run on a regular basis, the ones that have high content. But also, I would say, don't be afraid to speak at a meetup. If you want to speak at KubeCon, then a meetup is a great way to introduce yourself to a smaller audience and then build up. And that's what we've tried to do with ours, is give people platforms who are not well-known speakers or who are speakers at all, give them 5 minutes on the lightning demo, then give them a presentation, and then promote them into submitting to KubeCon. And so like with ours, what we've tried to do is not focus on known speakers. So people who are always speaking at KubeCon, we tend to avoid those speakers. We want speakers that are local, speakers that don't get the chance to speak at the big conferences. That's my last thing.
Thank you. That's a really important point that I wanted to mention. So thank you all for coming today. If you have any questions that you didn't get to ask, or if you come up with any along the way, You can find us all on Twitter.